was unique because it pissed him off when he got bucked off. He was so mad that he would drive all night. And so when he got bucked off, we'd look at each other and we kind of giggle and laugh because we knew we didn't have to drive till tomorrow.
Hey, hit that subscribe button now. You're going to like it. Welcome to the Luke Branquino Show. Most people knew about this show, but my next guest, it was new to him, so it's a pleasure to have him on to experience for the first time the Luke Branquino Show. And as the guest, we're going to talk about all kinds of things that I have personally heard, but I don't know that a lot of the fans have. Cody, thanks for joining me.
Hey, thanks, Luke. I'm sorry I didn't know you had a show.
Well, really, I'm not surprised because I know how technologically, I don't want to say it, advanced you are.
I tell my team that social media steals your soul. I try to keep mine.
But you got your Texas Rattlers have to have Instagram and social media. Who you don't obviously you don't
people to take care of that. Gabe checks on it every now and then.
Well, Cody, I want to because obviously I've been there. Not obviously, a lot of people didn't know that. I spent a lot of time at the Lambert Ranch in probably past 10 years, I guess, 8-10 years. So I got to hear a lot of your cool stories.
Yeah, we loved it. A lot of cowboys come and go and stay here, and the steer wrestlers used to when you and Dakota Eldridge and Blaine Jones and Tucker Allen, lots of guys that stayed here, and we kind of missed those days. I haven't had very many steer wrestlers come by in the last 2 or 3 years, but a lot of you guys stayed here in the winters, and it was just a blast for me because I felt like I'm an old rodeo guy, and I felt like I was still in the game because I'd get to keep up with you guys practicing, and then where you were entered and everything like that, and it was always a lot of fun for me, and I still do that with some of the bull riders and things like that, but I do miss the bulldoggers.
Well, you got a lot of work out of us, I know that, but a lot of it, which we'll get into more of that, but was work that you had, accidentally broke something and then we had to fix it. So, but we'll get into that.
That was a good story because we were having a steer wrestling qualifier for the American, and I waited till the last minute because I wanted the ground to be perfect, and I had it watered and everything, and I drugged the arena and I got it just how I thought we wanted it. And as I was driving out, I drive right through the bulldogging box, and I'm dragging that, and I'm looking backwards, and I didn't realize I had the door to my tractor open, and it's glass, and it hangs on the rope and on the chute there, and shattered that glass. And so we had to start 45 minutes late because we were raking up glass so we could get that done. And I appreciate you fixing the door for me. We had to order one, and you fixed it. You fixed a lot of stuff around here. That's one of the things I miss about you.
Not my charming personality, right?
I miss your cooking. I miss your maintenance. I miss you making the young bull riders that were staying here get up and take out the trash or something.
They didn't like me.
They didn't like you. Dakota was on them a little bit too.
Some of the stories that we'll talk more about more of that stuff, but some of the stories that we talk about as just hanging out in the truck or driving around, but growing up in New Mexico and having your dad as a jockey and the life you lived before the rodeo.
Well, physically it helped develop a lot of stuff, a lot of skills, because galloping those racehorses, those thoroughbreds in the mornings and required some strength and balance and stamina, and it was a great overall workout for a rough stock rider, and you learn to react to animals and stuff like that. So I spent a lot of time riding horses and stuff. We were always lucky enough that we got to rodeo as kids, and we got to ride and rope and try every event, and that was just available to us. But we did follow the racetracks in New Mexico. We would be at Sunland Park, right there close to El Paso, and that's where we went to school. And then in the summers in Ruidoso, and then we'd get to go to Albuquerque. So there were two big rodeos I'd get to watch, Albuquerque and El Paso every year, and that's when I get to see the pros riding that when I was a kid, and I really enjoyed that. And we tried every event, and it worked out for me that my favorite two were the bronc riding and bull riding.
Well, and your dad Cliff was the first to win the All-American fraternity at Ruidoso. That's correct?
Yeah, 1959 was a big year in quarter horse racing and a big year in rodeo. It's the first year of the national finals. It was the first year of the All-American fraternity, and my dad won the very first one, and that's always been a big deal to us, and we've been really proud of that. And he went on to train race horses for 60 years after that, and just retired a little over a year ago. Broke his leg. He's 86 years old now. He broke his leg. Two-year-old he's saddling knocked him down and stepped on him, and he had to spend about a year down. But he's back to riding and not training any horses, but he helps my brother a little bit.
He's back to riding at 86 years old, you said?
He does. He likes it. He had to spend a year off of it, and that was hard on him. But he got pretty bored. But now
I bet a guy that's been his whole life on the back of a horse.
Right, and my brother really likes to rope, and so when he leaves town to rope, Cliff will go watch his barn for him, and so he'll get to ride and go to the track and back and forth and lead horses back and forth to the track. So he stays busy. So
you got Chuck and Casey and as your brothers, but I don't know if I'm sure I've told you this story. Your sister Cheyenne, Southwest airline flight attendant. I was flying from Little Rock, Arkansas to Ontario, California to go to industry. And I was with, I think, Doug and Tim Farr. We're on this airplane, and we get to the very back of the plane, and we've been rodeoing. You know as well as anybody how you go in the fall trying to make the finals. And we sit down, and this pretty girl comes up and taps us on the shoulder. It's like, "You guys cowboys?" And she was a lot like a Lambert, I'm assuming, just sarcastic and being a smart ass. And we're like, "Yes, ma'am." And she's like, "My name's Cheyenne Lambert. I'm Cody Lambert's sister." And we hit it off. And that was back in the day. She let us serve peanuts to everybody, and she let us serve drinks. And when I'm telling you, I've never been so drunk on an airplane thanks to your sister as I was that day or that night. And then let's just say I did not perform well at the City of Industry the next morning in the slack. But that was my first experience with any of the Lambert family. And gosh, she was an awesome girl.
Gave you an excuse for not winning anything at Industry. So you got to find a positive in there somewhere, and there it is.
Yeah, there it is. Well, now she is married to a bulldogger.
Yeah, he's going to Birch Nagard, and they live up in Sundance, Wyoming, and she started pretty late in life, but she's got a little boy, Baze, that's roping and riding, and it's getting pretty exciting to watch him.
Oh, I could imagine. Yeah, I got to, I think it was it was COVID, so it was 20. We got to spend some time up there. We went to Belle Fourche and went and hung out at their place and got to meet Baze, and obviously knew Birch and your sister. And Birch called me last year. He says he's a real big fan of Cody Johnson. He's playing, I can't remember, Rapid City, I think, or somewhere out there. So I was able to get Baze backstage with Cody, and he got to hang out with him, so he was pretty pumped on that. And then I seen him at the finals in Vegas, and man, that kid was so polite. He come up, shook my hand, said thank you, and anyway, that was pretty cool to be able to let him get to meet Cody. He's
a good one, and he is a little cowboy, and he loves it. He's into it every day, and he's starting to rope pretty good. He's roping breakaway roping, and Cheyenne sent me a video of him catching one at a rodeo there just the other day.
Well, he must get that from Cheyenne because I've seen Birch swing a rope
Well, Birch is naturally left-handed, so I got to take up for him a little bit there because he ropes good enough that he won the all-around at Pendleton one time anyway. So
I almost won the all-around at Pendleton, Cody.
I've seen you rope too, and I've seen you rope too, and I question why you weren't entered.
Now, speaking of all-around, I've won the all-around. It's in the back right here. It's Cow Palace.
The Cow Palace.
And I know you have a Cow Palace buckle.
Yeah, 2 of them. Who's counting?
Yeah, who's counting, right? So I won a total of $1,900 to win the all-around, win that saddle. Trav Cattle, guy I was rodeoing with when I first started, he had like in 90s, he would win like 8,000, and he never win the all-around because of guys like you and Ty Murray.
Yeah, that's how it works. Sometimes you'd be the only guy that placed in 2 events and get it. See, I like the Cow Palace, for instance. I never won the all around there, and they gave a saddle, a nice saddle too. Mm-hmm. I won 2 different events there and never won the all around.
Yeah, Trav was. I mean, I guess when you got Ty 2 and 3 events.
Well, Ty made guys quit trying for the all around. I mean, I've seen this happen a few times in my lifetime. I've been a rodeo fan always, and Ty made guys that were pretty good all around hands focus on their best event. He was so good, and you saw that with Trevor, and you see it right now with Stetson. That they're not worried about the all around.
I was talking to somebody yesterday about Stetson and how great he is, and if he'll be able to continue that greatness. In the rough stock, it's obviously more prone to injury. Gosh, the way that kid's on a roll, he's pretty unbelievable.
Yeah, he's so good. He's just all about winning. Stetson's he's one of the best bronc riders I've ever seen in my life, and that's just come along in the last couple of years too. But he went from a guy that was surprised that he made the NFR to the world champion that made all the other bronc riders get better, because if they want to keep up with him, they better ride really good. The level of winning that he's on is like Ty or Trevor or you. I've seen guys that did it. I've never really been to that place. I visited a time or 2, but I couldn't live there. And you guys have that, and Stetson has it just like that. He doesn't forget to win when he gets to the rodeo.
When we were there, I always remember that was what you'd always say to us when we'd leave. We'd go somewhere. Hey, don't forget to win. Somebody asked me that question. You go and win one world championship. Why is it so much harder for a lot of other people? You have 5. They get 1 and they struggle. They have a hard time. And I don't know that I could honestly answer that and give the right answer. But I always remember when I'd win a gold buckle, I'd go home the next day, and I start at the bottom. I had to prove myself that I was the best. I didn't have to prove to anybody else, but I worked at every day to prove to myself that I was the best. And I think that just helped elevate me to stay in that winning mindset.
And I've seen it, and I admire it so much, but I could never make myself get to that place. I could get in the vicinity, but you guys, the world champions, especially the multiple world champions, there's a focus there. There's a focus there that how to get that to that next gear. You know how to get there, and you know how to get to a gear sometimes that you didn't even realize you had. Right. And winning is like winning. I've seen it with Ty. I've seen it with Tuff and Lane and Jim Sharp and Dave Appleton. The winning is like breathing. It's taken for granted a lot of times, but you also have to have it, and I see you guys are in it like that.
Well, it's something, everybody asks me at the clinics, how do you win? You can't teach that. I mean, you cannot teach somebody how to win. They have to put in the work to be good at their job, But to teach them to win, there's no way to really teach that, is there?
No, and there's no way to. You can encourage them, you can get on them, you can beg them, but if they don't want it, you can't make them want it. You've got to want to be there. And I coach the team now, and so I look at a lot of this, and I look back on a lot of the winning that the guys that I traveled with and that I was around and stuff that they did. And what I can see at my age now is they had a focus that nobody else has. And it's not a 24-hour focus. It might be just in competition. It might be they might flip that switch right when they ride, and then they could be a clown all day long, or they could, or whatever. But when it's time to take care of business, they take care of business in a way that is so cool to see. It's just the greatest. It's so real, and it's the greatest part of sports to me is the competition and the guys that lay it out there to win all the time. And that's what make me a big fan of yours, is just seeing how you had the ability to beat guys that were just as good an athlete as you were, but you figured out a way to get it done all the time.
Well, to that point, there was a movie with Kevin Costner called Love of the Game, baseball movie. I'm not sure if you've seen it or not, but he'd get on the mound and he'd clear the mechanism. He'd tell himself to clear the mechanism. That's what I feel like when I ride in the box. All that outside noise, it's gone. You don't hear anything. You focus on the job at hand. And like you said, it's not an hour-long process. It's a 10-second process that your mind goes through to focus in and win. And when that movie came out, I'm like, wow, that feels like my riding in the arena to me.
And it's all the preparation that you've done too, because I've seen you help those young guys, Luke. You see it in a way that a lot of them don't see it. And you know as well as I do that the harder you work, the more you feel confident, the more you feel like you kind of deserve it because you have done the work and everything getting there. But you can work that hard and you can put all that into it and not know what's going wrong, or what little step that you're skipping, or little fundamental that you don't understand. And I've seen you talk to those guys about getting up over those steers and having a wide base and things like that. I've heard you tell
it's stuck in your mind. That's how much I said it.
I've heard you tell them pros that were going to the NFR, stuff like that. I've seen how they respect and appreciate that from you, and everybody doesn't see it that way. Like everybody doesn't see everything that happens. That's what I feel like I'm pretty good at, is seeing a lot of detail on what happens. You don't have to be that way. I tell them in different ways. I tell them in different ways. Just take what you do know and make it work.
Right.
So if you know the fundamentals, you don't have to know 100 different things. You can know 2 or 3 things and make it work. And take what you do know and make it work, rather than worrying about all the things out there that you might not know. And then you get somebody like you that can help them with a little detail, with just their posture, or how they catch, or how they bend that knee, or how they catch that steer, or what they do before their feet hit the ground, or something like that. And you can see those little details. I've seen that in you. I've seen you helping those guys with it, and I've seen how they appreciate that. And that's something that's really cool about. You had to have done all the work. You had to have studied all of it all those years to turn it on for those 10 seconds that you're talking about.
Yeah, that's for sure. And and I can remember starting at 11 years old, jumping the bail, and I'd set up the old VHS recorders, and I put the bail, and I'd go to the house and put it in and watch and make sure I was doing everything right. And this was, 3 years before I ever jumped my first steer live, and that work you put in, it's burned into your mind, and I think that would dang sure help me become as successful as I did. And also forgetting, having short-term memory, fix what you did wrong and then go back to do it. And especially in the bull riding, which, you mentioned, obviously you're the head coach of the Texas Rattlers, and you guys had a great year, winning 3 events and ended up third in the race for the championship. But forgetting is key too. I mean, forgetting the negativities.
Well, you got to move on past it. You've got to move past it. You can still let it burn here and there. You can still use it in places, but you can't be just pissed off and dwelling on the negative. You've got to focus on the good stuff. You've got to focus on that feeling that you want. Have that feeling that you want when you're dominating, when you're riding your bull and you're doing everything right. You want to focus on that feeling, but you've got to know how to get to that feeling, and you've got to fight off the bad stuff.
And that fighting off the bad stuff, you said it right there, that could be tougher than somebody could even imagine.
That's the mental game. The mental game of it is the mental game at different times is so hard, and for different reasons. It can be something that's happening outside the arena. It could be something that and it's always causing you to lose focus or lose confidence. And it is relatable to the bull riding, the steer wrestling, any other sport, any other job. You get in a habit where your reaction is to ride by that steer when anything doesn't feel good. Well, then pretty soon you've done it and you didn't want to. You've done it, you've reacted that way, and you didn't, and it's over. And you drove 1,000 miles for that one header, and now you got to get back in, and you keep replaying. Well, if I'd have done it,
yeah.
Well, you got first at some point you got to let that one go, and you got to run that one that matters tomorrow,
right?
Or today. Whenever you get there, the only one that matters is that one right now. But you've got to make that happen. And the bull riding is the same way. But sometimes you've got to fight off self-preservation.
I was going to say that because the older you get, and I know for me, the older I get, I'm like, well, maybe it's a little muddy, or maybe this steer might stop a little too much. Maybe I don't want to get off. And anytime you have those thoughts in your head, you might as well just mail in your check and go home, because and not just that one, but on and on to the next ones. That self-preservation for a rodeo cowboy is the devil.
Yeah, when that becomes your reaction, you've got to fix it, or you got to go get a different job, because that won't work. And especially in the bull riding, if you're going to, all of them are that. This bulldogging's that way, because if your reaction is to save yourself, it's already happened and you're done.
Well, I've always said the bulldogging is the second most dangerous event in rodeo. Obviously, barrel racing first, but if you have that doubt in your head, you're going to get hurt. And especially in the bull riding, if you have any doubt, and I've been on, 50 bulls in my life, but if you ever think, okay, I'm going to get hurt, there's a chance I'm going to get hurt on this bull. Well, you just increased your chances of getting hurt by 100% almost. Same in the steer wrestling, same in the everything. And
there's some scary times, and there's some desperate times, and there's times when you've got to win because you've got to win because you've already spent the money that you don't have, and then there's times that you've got to win because you've got to win because it's the last week of the regular season and you're 16th, and you've got to win, and you've got to, there's desperate times like that and stuff. But it all comes back to your preparation, your confidence, and just reacting and doing your job, because you can't. It happens so fast, you can't just think about it. So your reaction has to be to go to the fight, to take it to whatever you're doing.
Well, and that's life. That's just life in general. I mean, in my opinion, that's how we were raised. And you take the fight to it, and don't let the fight come to you. And that, I think, helped build success in my career and what I'm trying to instill in my boys, like you instilled in Riley, and like he's doing with his kids, and I think that's the difference of being just a person and being a successful person.
We learn a lot. We learn a lot from our parents. We learn a lot from the people we're around, and that becomes who we are. And so passing that on to your kids that's the coolest thing about it. Or now my grandkids and that sort of thing. That's the coolest thing about it, is being able to share what you've learned and share your mistakes with somebody. That's what I talk about with my guys is learn from my mistakes. Learning from your mistakes is great, but learning from other people's mistakes is even better, because you don't have to make them yourself.
That is the truth right there. When you in your prime, and again, I know we've discussed this, but I mean you got to rodeo with some of the very best legends in the game. Tuff Hedeman, Ty Murray, Jim Sharp. But Lane is one I want to talk about, because I didn't get to know Lane like I got to know the other guys you rodeoed with.
Lane Frost was focused, and he oozed that winning. Like, he loved for the guys that we're traveling with, everybody to do well, and we all wanted each other to win, but he wanted himself to win more than anyone else in the car. And so it was like there was a camaraderie, and we all felt like we're on the same team, but there was also individualism there where there was no doubt that those guys wanted to be the world champion. They wanted to be the world champion that year too. They didn't want to share. They wanted, and so we all were doing pretty good. And Lane would get bucked off. He would ride 20 bulls in a row, and then get bucked off one. That's something that I share with my guys on my team, that what I've seen in my lifetime is guys that ride 50 in a row without getting bucked off, and they get bucked off once. And because if they've never seen it before, they don't know it exists.
Right.
So I got to try to explain to them that they do have the ability to go on and ride whatever bull they run in for. So anyway, Lane was just like Tuff or Jim. They wanted to win at every rodeo they went to, and wanted to ride every bull, and there's no excuse. You can't make an excuse. You get bucked off, it's your fault, and you fix it and you go on. But Lane was unique because when he got bucked, everybody thought he was so nice, and everybody wanted, and he talked to everyone, and they were his friends, but it pissed him off when he got bucked off. He was so mad that he would drive all night. And so when he got bucked off, we'd look at each other and we kind of giggle and laugh, because we knew we didn't have to drive till tomorrow. And so Lane would get in there and he'd drive 400 miles. He'd just as fast as whatever car we're driving would go. He's so mad. I was putting my seatbelt. He's driving so fast, my car was just shaking, and I was putting my seatbelt on, and he said something about, then back in those days, none of us wore a seatbelt. And he said something about it. And I said, well, I don't think it's really going to save me, but I want him to be able to find me. Yeah. He would get in there and he would drive, and then after 400 or 500 miles, he might be a little tired. And so if he said, he tried to wake one of us to drive, then I'd say, hey, I thought you had him, Lane. And then he's good for another. He's mad again. He's good for another 200 miles. That was a funny thing, because he was a competitor. He was a fierce competitor. He's a nice guy on the outside, but he wanted to win as bad as anyone has ever wanted to win.
Oh, and I've heard that story. You've told me before, but I still love that. And I think the fans will appreciate that, because there's guys I think that I've rodeoed with that were very similar in that way, you know, and that's what to me is the difference between somebody that's a winner and somebody that just goes to compete.
There's all levels where they fall in there, you know, like, and I can see at my age, I wanted to make sure I made the NFR, and I wanted to make a good living. But my only goal and my only dream was to go home. To have a home and to be able to go home. I loved my job more than any job that anyone's had, but it just wasn't it. Like I couldn't get that kind of focus, and I admire that kind of focus. I admire that, but I could never make myself. I could never see myself as a world champion like that. Like, and I can see it in the difference being around you guys and being around the guys I travel. Every traveling partner I had was a world champion. From every traveling partner, from Dave Appleton, Ty, Tuff, Lane, Jim, Michael Gaffney, they all were wound up being world champions at some point.
What do you think, though, in your honest opinion, separated, because you were around that? What separated them from you and you being able to get that goal?
Well, they stayed on more bulls than me, is the simple.
Well, number one, right?
But like there was one year where I stayed on, like I rode my riding percentage was really, really high in 1988. And I stayed on 93 bulls out of 114 or something. Like I found my book, and it was up there, and I was fifth. And I was fifth. I was fifth best bull rider in the world that year, but I was the fourth best bull rider in my car, you know, and the guys I'm traveling with. So it was easy for me. It was easy for me to accept that I was going to be pretty good, and I was one of the guys in that group, but I wasn't the guy in that group ever, you know. And that I don't know. I couldn't make myself. I tried to. I read books about it. I tried to get to where I wanted that, but I could. My goal was just had to be different. My goal was. I remember when I was a little kid going to school, and I'd see a little house, and it might be a little single wide on a half an acre, and I'd say, man, that'd be nice to have that. That's what I thought about when I was a little kid. I thought about having a place to live, where I was going to live, and that's what I thought about having a family and stuff like that. And I don't want that to ever sound like an excuse or anything like that, but I couldn't, because the respect and the admiration I have for the world champions and the best at it, I could not make myself want it, no matter how hard I tried. I could not find that.
But did you think you wanted it? Like you said, I thought I wanted, but just couldn't, you know?
No, see, I thought, now if I get where, because I wanted to make a living, and because I worked two events, and because I worked two events well enough to go to the NFR, sometimes in both, sometimes in one or the other. And I was up there. One event would kind of pay my bills for the year, and the other event it helped me make a better living, working two events at that level. But I tried, and I talked to Leanne about it, and we talked about, you know, and I couldn't set that goal because I didn't mean it, you know, like you guys mean it. You guys mean it, and the way you can compartmentalize, or the way Trevor Brazil can compartmentalize your life, that you can still be good husbands and fathers and have a great life at home and be the world champion. That's just like that's another level. And you guys, and I look up to that so much. But I could only focus on one thing at a time, and that one thing, you know, that took most of my mind was not winning the championship. And I thought about riding all the time. I thought about the rodeo and all the time, but I was thinking about it in a way of my end goal was that home that I was talking about. My end goal was paying for that. I had a grandpa that didn't ever finance anything in his life. He had a ranch in Arizona, and if he wanted a new pickup, he waited till he had enough money to pay for a new pickup. And if he did, and it's about impossible to do that these days. Right. But I looked up to that. I looked up to that to the point that I wanted to be that kind of guy. So that was like before I quit riding. When I quit riding bulls in 1996, I could not do it the way my grandpa did, but I could have it all paid off by the time I quit riding. And that was always the thing that was meaning the most to me. And so that's what I tried to focus on. And I didn't even realize it at the time that I was holding back at competing at that highest level. Like I couldn't turn it loose like you guys do. Like I couldn't make myself find that other gear, and I tried it. And so I coach some young guys, and I tell them to learn from my mistake.
Right.
Because that doesn't mean you can't. There's not a reason you can't have both. There's not a reason you can't have all of that.
Well, Cody, thank you so much. Honestly, the memories I had rodeoing and spending time at your guys' place and getting to know you and Leanne and Riley and the family, it's like I said, those are memories that I share with so many people, and that'll never leave me. So I appreciate you coming on. I'm looking forward to the PBR team season this year, and Texas Rattlers dominating, getting that championship. And thanks again for coming on.
I'm glad you have a favorite team too, since you're going to be neutral there.
In my contract, it didn't say that.
I appreciate it coming on and talking about this stuff, because it brings back a lot of good memories. And just like I was telling you the last time we talked, I kind of miss those days when the Bulldoggers were staying here, and I'll be glad to see you.
Yeah, likewise. Make sure you keep that chair nice and squishy for me, so next time I come back, it's ready to go.
It's your chair for sure.
All right, thanks, Cody. Have a good one.
Thank you, Luke.
You bet.
Let me take a 1 minute break before we get into this, because that one's a good one. Is that okay?
Yeah, you take a break. Yes.
I gotta go pee.
Too much coffee.
Too much coffee.